Hey guys, so today we are going to continue to look at adjectives and adverbs that compare, and we are going to be reviewing them. We have been looking at these for the last couple weeks, and we should be getting better with them as we are moving forward. So our goal is I can review using adjectives and adverbs that compare correctly in speaking and in writing. Okay, so we have two types of ways to compare adjectives and adverbs. The first part is comparative. So comparative adjectives compare two people, places, or things. You form a comparative adjective by adding er for most adjectives. You can also form a comparative adjective by adding more before the adjective. The other type of comparative is a superlative adjective. Superlative adjectives compare more than two people, places, or things. You can form a superlative adjective by adding est for most adjectives. You can also form a superlative adjective by adding most before the adjective. Then we also have comparative adverbs that compare two actions. And you can form a comparative adverb by adding er for most adverbs. You can also form a comparative adverb by adding more before an adverb that ends in ly. Superlative adverbs compare more than two actions. You form a superlative adverb by adding est for most adverbs. You can also form a superlative adverb by adding most before an adverb that ends in ly. So let's look at a couple sentences and look at asking ourselves those questions to identify if it's an adverb or an adjective. Dante's flashlight was brighter than Logan's. So what are we comparing? We're comparing the flashlights, and we are looking at is it an action or is it a thing? Well, flashlights are things, so we are comparing adjectives, and we're comparing two things, so we have to add er. Estrella walks more carefully around the puddle than Sophia. So what are we comparing? We're comparing how the girls walk. So we are comparing an action. That means we're looking at an adverb. We have to ask ourselves how many are being compared. Well, we're comparing Estrella and Sophia, so we're comparing two, which means we have to add more before carefully because carefully ends in ly. All right. Looking at our sentences, we have to choose the correct form of the word in parentheses and to complete the sentence. And then we're going to determine if the word in parentheses is an adjective or an adverb. So sentence 1 says, Madison eats dinner fast of all her family members. So we have to ask ourselves what is being compared. We're comparing how they eat dinner. And then we have to ask ourselves, is it an action or a thing? Well, in this case, it is an action. And then we have to decide how many. And we're looking at Madison and all her family members. So we should say fastest. Madison eats dinner fastest of all her family members. Let's look at number 2. Colt's shoes come untied soon than his sister's. So what is the correct word to put in this sentence? You should have put sooner. Is this word sooner an adjective or an adverb? You should have said adverb. So we're looking at comparing how they come untied, and because that is an action, untie is the action, then we are going to be looking at an adverb. Then we ask how many are being compared. There's 2, Colt and his sister's shoes. So we add ER to the adverb soon. Number 3, Parker's new bike is shiny than the old one. What is the correct way to say shiny? You should have said shinier. And we have to ask, is it comparing, or what is it comparing? In this one, it's comparing the bikes. We have to ask ourselves, are the bikes things or actions? Well, bikes are things, so it's a noun. So because it's a thing, we know that we are using adjectives. And then we ask how many we're comparing. We're comparing Parker's new one and his old one, so we're comparing 2, which means we add ER. In this case, we would make it shinier, where we have to drop the Y and add IER. Number 4, Izzy's family leaves the restaurant early than the other families. What is the correct word to use? You should have said earlier. And what is this word earlier? Is it an adjective or an adverb? You should have said adverb. So we're looking at what is this comparing. It is comparing when they leave the restaurant. When they leave the restaurant is an action, so it is going to be an adverb. Then it's asking, we have to ask ourselves how many are being compared. Well, we're comparing Lizzie's family and all of the other families. So we're comparing more than 2. So we're going to say earliest. Lizzie's family leaves the restaurant earliest than the other family. And I actually completely messed that one up. So we're going to try this again. Izzy's family leaves the restaurant early than the other family. What is the correct word to replace early? You should have said earlier. And is earlier an adjective or an adverb? It is an adverb. So we have to look at asking ourselves the question, what did it compare? It compared when the families leave the restaurant. That's an action. When they leave is an action. We are asking ourselves, how many are being compared? We're comparing Izzy's family and the other family. So we're looking at 2 families. We are going to use earlier to show when 2 families left. Number 5, Aria's house was built recently than the one across the street. What is the correct way to use recently? You should have said more recently. And is it an adverb or an adjective? So we're looking at what is being compared, and we are comparing when the houses were built. So that is telling me that it is an action, so it is an adverb. Then we are looking at how many are being compared. We're comparing Aria's and the one across the street, so 2. That means we add more to recently. Recently ends in ly, so we have to add more to the beginning of it. Sadie's hair is curly than her sister's hair. What is the correct form of curly? You should have said curlier. And is this an adjective or an adverb? This is an adjective because it is comparing hair. Hair is a thing, and we're comparing 2 of the people's hairs, is Sadie's hair and her sister's hair. So we add ER. To make curlier correct, you would need to take away the Y and add ER, IER. All right, let's look at sentence 8. The blue fish got to eat the most food. Should we change most to more? Should we change most to mostest? Or should we change most to more? Or D, no changes needed? you should have said D, no changes needed. So the sentence, the blue fish got to eat the most food. So we are looking at how much they got to eat. So it's an adverb. We're comparing the bluefish to all of the other fish. So we are going to say most because that is the superlative. All right, remember, comparative adjectives and adverbs are comparing two or more or two things. If you are comparing adverbs or adjectives, you add er, or you can add more before the adverb or the adjective. Superlative adjectives compare more than two things. So more than two people, places, or things, or more than two actions. To make a superlative, you need to add est to the adjective or the adverb, or you can add most before the adverb or the adjective.